What is good, NIO family? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's going on with NIO stock, what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers, and answer the question, can NIO bounce very soon? But before I break anything down about all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am personally not a financial planner, so take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. The offer ends in just 5 days, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, let's break down what's going on with the overall market. NIO was actually getting a bullish cross on the PPO today, making an attempt to bounce. It wasn't a very, very strong bounce. NIO kind of like gapped up, then started sinking as the day went on. So it still is looking kind of flat, not super, super strong, not too weak either, just in the middle. And NIO was up only like 0.9% to close. So it did outperform the market to some extent, but overall it's not looking extremely strong because it's still only at 8.5. But the question is, will the market bounce with NIO? I believe personally that the market has a little bit more downside coming before we make an attempt to bounce. But for the medium term, there could still be even more downside later on down the line. So I'm going to break that down in more context a little bit later, but let's first talk about the news. The news is still talking about how the unprofitable, quote unquote, unprofitable, company NIO has unveiled a new phone for drivers. That is some important news because this new phone could be a very big for their revenue. But as of right now, there's just not enough specs on it, not enough data on it for me to tell you how profitable this is going to be for NIO and whether or not NIO will end up raising prices or not. But compared to their predecessors, NIO's phone is actually a little bit more, it's more affordable for many individuals and NIO users than it is for other companies, and like relative to Huawei and other companies that are selling their own smartphones using similar software. NIO's phone is a little bit more affordable, but it still is once again going to be questionable to me because I don't truly know how profitable this will be and how many they really sell. But at the end of the day, it's still promising. I think it's very promising, and we will see how this ends up affecting them. Now, don't forget, guys, that we're approaching the end of the month, so we're going to get the September numbers within the next like 8 to 9 days. That's going to be very telling for NIO as well. As far as data goes, we don't really have anything coming out for today other than or at least for next week, other than like PCE at the end of the week. So that's going to be very telling for the stock market. Besides that, there's not a whole lot else going on. NIO had volume of about 36 million, it's very flat volume. And overall, looking at the price price ratio, is very flat. We saw more shorting on NIO. We saw another 32 million shares shorted, but it still is underperforming. Now, looking at NIO, it's very flat. It's not really giving us a massive short squeeze or anything like that. And the question is, will NIO bounce? Well, NIO has been uptrending right now in terms of its strength after hitting this bottom right here. And there is likely going to be an attempt for it to try to bounce first, but we might just kind of stay range bound for some time as we just got rejected off resistance right here around this 8.8 area and supports around this 8.4 zone. So I think that we could retest 8.35 to 8.4 and then try to bounce and push back up to 8.8. I think that's very likely because when we look at SPY, it's still looking relatively weak. It's been selling off. It formed another bullish divergence again today, but like I said before, that doesn't really matter that much. Could we gap up on Monday? Yes, we can. But the thing is, we might sell off a little bit lower. I could see us hitting 430 just to test that. And if that fails us, then we could even see this thing drop all the way down to about, I would say 427. That could be coming first on SPY before we end up getting a bounce. So I think that there could be a little bit more downside first. We are very oversold, so it should bounce soon, but we may drop a little bit more first. Tesla's looking very bearish. We made an attempt to bounce, but this ended up failing, and Tesla ended up breaking below our 200 EMA. So I warned everyone that if we broke below the 200, we could see downside. I was expecting an attempt to bounce, maybe a temporary bounce, and we did technically get it, but it didn't really last whatsoever. That's why it was a temporary bounce. 242 is going to be support on Tesla, followed by this imbalance down here towards this 237 area. I believe Tesla's heading down there before we make any attempt to bounce, so we could see this thing fall into the 230s first. I also wanted to add that Aapl is still not looking that great. It's very flat right now, going back and forth and back and forth. We have a potential head and shoulders forming on it. If we get this rejection, we could see it come down towards this 173.5 area. And then we also have a larger potential head and shoulders forming here, which could cause it to drop towards 171. Overall, it's looking more bearish. So we're going to be watching to see if this ends up developing that way. We have a potential cup and handle also forming that's inverted. So we might see Apple eventually break down towards 171 before this thing tries to bounce if we end up getting below 173.5. But I think we're going to retest 173.5 before trying to bounce, or we could go a little bit lower. So it's got to be one of those two. If the QQQ breaks below 357 as we're sitting at support right now, this thing could start sinking. We have a potential double bottom forming, but as of right now, it hasn't really given us confirmation of a bounce. It made an attempt to do so, but failed. So if this thing ends up breaking down, if 357 fails, then 354 could be where we bottom and then we bounce off that. As of right now, we're kind of stuck, so we'll see what happens on Monday. I either see it dropping a little bit more than bouncing or it just bounces from here, but my gut tells me I wouldn't be too confident about the bounce just yet. For Nvidia, we have this gap down here. It looks like it may reject and come down to fill this gap, establish a higher low, then start pushing a little bit upwards towards 420. I think it could just push a little bit upwards. We are on a slight uptrend on the 4-hour time frame, so there is most definitely potential for this. But the best thing to do is just be as patient as possible and wait and see how this ends up playing out. So, anyways, guys, I think I went over the majority of charts. What do I think all these charts suggest for NIO? There is a risk of some more downside. We could be retesting 8.3 to 8.5 again. Drop a little bit more before we get a bounce on NIO before it tries to make its way back up to 8.8. So I think everyone out there should be prepared for this just in case. And I also want to remind you all that this is not necessarily NIO's fault. It's not NIO's fault that this is happening. So do what you have to do, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you for listening. And let me just remind you, I'm not going to be available tomorrow to record another video because I'm going to be moving to a new place. So I can't record a video tomorrow. I won't be around. You won't see me until Sunday. So I'll see you guys on Sunday. Please take care, do what you have to do, and I'll see you guys very, very soon. Thank you, and peace out.